Hey guys, and welcome to Marketing in the Madness. And today we are going to meet the fantastic Michelle Morgan.
My mission became making mental health an everyday conversation.
Mental health is something very close to my heart as well because my mum has bipolar.
Our people are our greatest asset. Why wouldn't we look after them?
It's all we have in agency world.
If you don't have a culture that supports someone talking about their mental health, then your brilliant policies, processes and provisions are practically worthless.
Gen Z is within my business. They are a lot more open.
Yeah.
I think we can actually learn a lot from them.
When a senior person opens up and shares a way in which they have struggled, that has the biggest impact.
We're a service industry.
Yeah.
And it's all about people.
Yeah.
So we have to prioritise their mental health. If we don't change and start to talk to this audience, our business is potentially going to die. Hey guys, and welcome to Marketing in the Madness. This week I am talking to another fantastic female who I have been lucky enough to meet through actually a marketing conference that Pimento put on, who has really inspired me in my career for a couple of reasons. One, she founded an agency that really broke through and did something super different to other agencies out there. And I'm not going to give you a spoiler alert. We'll let Michelle tell you about what the agency did. In fact, it happened to be a client of mine way after Michelle was there. But also she is a mental health first aider. And I have actually been involved with Michelle on helping break a Guinness World Record around mental health, which we'll talk about a bit on the podcast. So, as always, I'm Katie Street, and today we are going to meet the fantastic Michelle Morgan. Hello, Michelle.
Hello.
And welcome to Marketing in the Madness. And this is the first time we're recording in this wonderful new studio. For those of you watching on YouTube, I hope you like it. I do. And thank you, Michelle, for being my guinea pig. So I'm going to start the way I often start these podcasts, which is really to ask you a little bit about your story. Now, I know Michelle's literally just been saying to me, I don't want to go too deep into my story because people can find it, but you have got the most amazing story and one that I think I can certainly resonate with as a female founder or an agency founder. So for those that don't know you, can you tell us a little bit about Michelle and your, experience in the world of marketing?
Yes, of course. So you don't need me to start 51 years ago.
You can do if you want, darling,
okay.
When I was born.
Where does it pick up in agency world? It picked up in Hong Kong, actually. That's where I actually first made my way into an agency and discovered this wonderful land where you could be creative and be creative on lots of different brands and businesses. And that really appealed to me in Hong Kong. Things moved so quickly that within a year I had quite an amazing portfolio of work. And it meant that I could come back to London as someone who had failed all of their exams, who had got chucked out of college within about the first 2 months, and who had, until that point in Hong Kong, which was in about my mid-20s, really been kind of winding my way through life and jobs and trying to find out what I was good at and then what I was maybe interested in. It meant that I could come back with that experience under my belt, having blagged my way into an agency in Hong Kong, which somehow seemed easier than doing it in the UK. But I could come back here and I managed to get a really great job with an agency called KHWS, who were based in Soho at the time, still going now, brilliant agency. And then about 5 years into KHWS, just had this real kind of fire in my belly to look at starting something up myself. And then with the stars aligning, as they often do, especially when you put an idea out there, I met who was to become my business partner, Sam Conniff, and we had a real meeting of minds. And essentially we wondered, could you have a socially responsible youth marketing agency that could save the world? And we were in our late 20s and, we wanted And I think we could think big because we weren't really restricted by a lifetime of, having to accept that you can't always save the world. But, knowing now that you can change the world. So we started Livity up really as a bit of an experiment in 2001, and started with some brilliant clients. So we had work that we could get on with. And then very quickly, due to a number of different reasons, we started to have young people come and join us in the office. And, it has to be said that usually those young people probably should have been at school because it was during the week time. But we had one rule: if you're in this office, it's a place of work, so you work, which we figured was probably better than them not being in an office working, but maybe doing whatever they were doing or not doing out of school. And that really embedded our methodology and our sense of purpose and wanting to create social impact through the work that we did as a marketing agency for some of the biggest brands, certainly in the UK and in some cases the world. Could we create effective, creative work, but that always placed more importance on generating some kind of social impact benefit to young people, to the audience that we were helping brands connect with? And this methodology of co-creation, which is essentially putting your audience, your community, your customer right at the heart of your thinking, your talking, your doing, and the solutions that you're creating as a business for your clients. And that doesn't have to just be from a marketing agency point of view. And in fact, we've seen that model of co-creation. I've seen it kind of over 2 decades now become something that is quite a regular thing and methodology to see other businesses embracing, which feels good.
Yeah, and oh my goodness, what you created in Livity, well, it still lives on today. And I was just saying to you that actually, until quite recently, we've been working with Livity on their go-to-market strategy to help them attract and win work with, again, I mean, I can't probably say because I'm under NDA, but the work that we've managed to introduce them to has been absolutely epic. And I think they've got such a fantastic story. What you guys, that idea that you had, all those years ago, still lives on today. And brands really need to understand, more than ever, obviously we talk about Gen Z and the kind of, youth marketing, the customers of the future. We've spoken to people like, for instance, HSBC, who were like, if we don't change and start to talk to this audience, then our business is potentially going to die because we've never spoken to them before. They've been talking to, well, I think I'm just a millennial, which I think maybe you're Gen X. Yeah, Gen X. But but they've done okay at speaking to us. We've grown up with that brand.
Absolutely.
But there's so many businesses out there that need to connect with the youth audience, understand the behaviours. So I think the agency that you brought to life with Sam, who also, by the way, is an absolute legend. I've had him on my previous podcast as well, talking about his current project, which is all about uncertainty. And I hear has he just got engaged to his co-host of the Uncertainty Experts, which is going on Netflix, which has been amazing. Anyway, I am going off on a bit of a tangent here, but I think just you guys being brave enough to go and launch that business. And I do think, like you say, in your 20s, you've got that kind of gusto, that bravery, like, we want to make a difference, we want to do something, we've got this idea, and you go off and do it. And I think sometimes as we get a little bit older, navigating change can become a little bit harder. So I'm going to delve into what happened next now. So, of course, you've launched the agency. You're running the agency with Sam. You're doing some great work. But then things started to happen that maybe have taken you on a slightly different journey. And I know that you're a huge mental health advocate. Mental health is something very close to my heart as well, because my mum has bipolar. And so I've grown up with someone who's, has got obviously fairly large scale mental health issues. And there's lots of different types of bipolar. My mum, of course, has one of the worst ones, which she, self-prescribes alcohol and other things, which, not other things, just alcohol, but, that doesn't really help. So tell me about you running the agency. Seemingly everything's amazing. You're growing. You've got a great story. You're probably one of the most, famed agencies. Everyone usually within our industry knows who Livity are. You guys did something quite different, but things weren't necessarily for you maybe as rosy as they seemed.
Yeah. And this big part of my story and kind of then what happened next, and I guess part of the reason of why I'm here, and some of the things that I'm going to share in this conversation. This happened 16 years into Livity. So I'd been leading Livity for 16 years. And there are the ups and downs of business. There are definitely the ups and downs of agencies, and agency life and the agency model. But, let's face it, there are the ups and downs of life as well. And in 2016, I had one of those years, and we've all had them. One of those days, one of those weeks, one of those months, and sometimes we have one of those years. And that's what it was for me. And lots of different things were going on for me. I was leading the business through an investment round, which was great, but it was such new, complex and exciting things to be doing. And I was doing that in tandem with the day-to-day leading of Livity. I had a lot of physical health issues that were not at that stage diagnosed, and that, if I'm being completely honest, I was ignoring to a degree, and kind of that mentality of keep on keeping on. And of course, I was running even faster with the investment deal, and my body was not up to it, but I was ignoring all of those signs. And, I had just really random things happen in that year, like a horrifically traumatic experience on a plane. It wasn't all bad. My daughter had just started at secondary school and she was absolutely loving it. And my husband's an artist and his career was really taking off, and he was flying to commissions around the world, and he had been the main carer for kind of school runs and making sure the child was fed and all of that. And so suddenly the demands on me as a parent, who had to then find that extra time to pick Lily up from something, make sure I was there, not being able to necessarily be so flexible with work whilst having to still be really flexible with work, meant much, much longer days that were already long days. And in short, at the end of that year, once the deal was done, and we were in the first 100 days, and so I was thinking, well, I'm really going to take it a bit more easy after I've got the first crucial 100 days of the new deal and this new relationship done. I burnt out. I just hit a wall. I sat at the bottom of my stairs in my house and just felt like I couldn't go on. And it was really scary and confusing and upsetting, whilst being nothing, because what I had, and that wasn't diagnosed at the time, was clinical depression. And it was also highly anxious making. The anxiety that was running through my veins, I could feel I had insomnia. I felt quite paranoid. I couldn't see a future in any which way. So I knew I was going to have to take some time out of the business to address the physical issues that I was experiencing. I'd got a diagnosis. I was going to have quite a major operation, and I had really severe anemia. And so I needed to get my health up, ready for that operation. I was going to step out of the business. But actually, at this moment, I also knew that I needed to step out of the business because of this moment of burnout, of hitting a wall, and really because of my mental health. I wasn't using that language at the time. And I wanted to communicate to the business I wouldn't be around for a little while, but not to alert anyone, but to be honest as well. And kind of in drafting that message, I just received a throwaway comment. Only a relatively small group of people knew about what I was experiencing at the time. But, let's say it could have been any one of those people. And I was just told it's a bit awkward when you talk about your mental health, Michelle, which I'm sure came from a place of not being educated, not really understanding the power of and the impact of language. But of course, for me, it was crushing and it was silencing. And just at the moment that I had started talking about how I was feeling and coping, or not feeling and coping, I stopped. And I stopped talking about it. And then lots happened. And, there are lots of places that you can read or listen or watch more of that story. But, on the other side, in a place of recovery, I learned so much from that whole experience. But I guess those words, which now I could label as stigmatizing, it's a bit awkward when you talk about your mental health. They kept coming back to me, and they really informed what I was about to do next, which was pivot my mission, essentially. So my mission had been really focused on benefiting the lives of young people, but in that place of recovery and thinking about what next, my mission became making mental health an everyday conversation, because no one should ever feel awkward talking about their mental health. And so I did that in lots of different ways. I set up a pyjama business called Pjoys, PJs with Purpose. It uses the emblem of the PJ day, the good ones, when we sit in our pyjamas all day and we rest and relax, and we should have more of those PJ days. And then there are also those PJ days that I have found that get me that knowing nod from someone else. And they're the days where we haven't been able to get out of our PJs because of some kind of mental health issue. And they are debilitating days often. But if we can help people feel less alone, if we can help people start a conversation without fear of judgment, without fear of consequence, especially in the workplace, what will happen to me? Not only what will people think about me, which is going to be, a massive barrier to people really sharing how they're feeling, but what will happen to me? What is the consequence of me saying this out loud in my business, in my workplace, to my line manager, to a colleague, to a peer, as well as out of the workplace, to my family, to my friends? There's so much fear that drives stigma. And so, pyjama business that delivered messages of hope, help and resource to people through the product and the packaging and the platform. And then I moved into the space of training, because I was doing a lot of public speaking. I was sharing my story. I was finding that when I share my story of burnout, clinical depression, anxiety, people will share theirs back. So actually, breaking stigma for me is not really rocket science, but it takes more and more of us to take that deep breath and start talking about how we've been impacted by mental ill health, and whether that is our own mental ill health or that of others. We just have to make it an easier thing to talk about. And, bringing that back to business, for me, it's a culture issue. So what I would say is, you can be a business that feels like you've really got this thing nailed, that you've got a real awareness and commitment to creating brilliant mental health policies, brilliant mental health processes, brilliant mental health and wellbeing provisions. However, if you don't have a culture that supports those open conversations, that supports someone talking about how they're feeling about their mental health without fear of judgment or consequence, then your brilliant policies, processes and provisions are practically worthless. And so, that's kind of one of the lessons through what is now 5 years of pivoting away from Livity, away from the day-to-day of Livity. I never went back into the day-to-day of Livity after I stepped out of it. And that took me by surprise, and I'm sure many others. But it was the right thing for me to do. And that was a big lesson as well. I didn't think I could leave a business that I created. You know, that might surprise other people, but I just didn't. I felt so attached, so responsible for the business, for the impact of the business, for the people of the business, and most importantly of all, for the young people that came into contact with our business. I never thought I could leave, but really that was part of what burnt me out. And so I learnt about boundaries, I guess. I learnt about boundaries the hard way, and I learnt that you can go and do other things. And so, yeah, out of bad things, good things can come, because I entered this new space and mission of, you know, helping normalise the conversation around mental health, or helping people feel more confident and capable to talk about mental health. So I did that through training, and then I wrote a book, Own Your Awkward, which was really taking that stigmatising comment and taking ownership of it, and me kind of really delving into, well, why did it feel awkward for someone else? And then why did it feel awkward for me? And learning about that, and then pouring everything that I had learned in terms of how do we talk more easily about our mental health into that book, into frameworks that can be used to start those conversations within a business as one part of having a program or placing your attention as a business on the important, crucial foundations of those policies, processes and provisions. And I'd really, really encourage business leaders, HR leaders, people leaders, talent leaders, wellbeing leaders, as well as all of those brilliant champions that there always are in a business who feel really passionate about the topic of mental health, to really take a step back and ask yourself, what are the beautiful truths and what are the brutal truths of how we talk about mental health in this business, the culture that we have in this business for people to feel that they can talk about how they're feeling. I think that almost has to be the starting place. So I'm now writing my second book, and that almost is taking that step before Own Your Awkward, which is about capability and confidence and frameworks to help people talk about it. But again, you have to have the culture, and that is a leadership issue. But of course, leadership is within us all, and so yeah, this is about the power of all of us to break stigma, mental health stigma, and particularly in the workplace, and how we do it, and taking the principles that Livity was a pioneer for, co-creation, collaboration, into solving, helping to solve, in part, the mental health crisis that we are experiencing and that is not going away.
No, I mean, first up, Michelle, what a story. And thank you for, well, not just for us, but in general, like what you're doing, I think, for the industry, and everything that you're highlighting is so important, not just as a founder of a, marketing agency in, let's be honest, probably look, we're not necessarily in the most high pressure, jobs in the world. We're not saving people's lives, but, the agency world, there is a lot of pressure, there's ups, there's downs. So I think owning and being so honest about your story is so inspiring to so many. So thank you for being so open in general about it all, because it's really helpful.
Thanks. I think you learn that, what's the worst?
Yeah.
Do you know what? I've been in a few different ways over the last 5-6 years. I've experienced, how it can feel like the worst. And here I am sitting with you, Katie. Yeah. Having a really positive conversation. We can get through hard times. We can get through difficulties, whether it's mental health or running our businesses.
Yeah.
And while agency land is so tough, it is so brutal. And then take all founders across all sectors. It is tough. It is brutal. It's a great privilege as well. And the highs are the highs.
Yeah. But it's very results driven. And I think that's what makes it so hard, is because your clients go, where are the results? Where's this? So if you're not driving results, or they're not being seen as quickly as said client wants to see it, and I think that's what's tough, and that's what makes our industry very often challenging to work in, is because we're a service industry, and it's all about people. So we have to prioritise their mental health. We have to understand that as businesses, we're putting our people under a huge amount of pressure, and we have a responsibility to make sure that they're okay. And I think that's the key thing. And it really made me think, even yesterday, one of my team was, I won't say too much, but was having, some problems in his personal life. And that kind of, it does show up, and it does affect him in the office. And half of me kind of wants to go, come on, leave it at the door. But at the end of the day, we're people, and you can't leave it at the door, because that's how you feel. And I think there is that, and you're probably from a similar era to me, where we're sort of, leave it at the door. Even my nan, don't talk at the dinner table. You're not allowed to. There was this very much keep it stum. You're not allowed to talk about it. But I do think the younger generation, and I do have a lot of Gen Z who work for us within my business, and they are a lot more open, and I think we can actually learn a lot from them. And we've spoken about doing this, and it's not happened, but we should definitely, within Street, I really want to get you in to kind of talk about the kind of mental health side of things. I think it's so important for all businesses to learn from this.
And the thing is, Casey, this, if we put our attention into this place, we're not wasting time. Our people are our greatest assets, right?
100%. Yeah.
So why wouldn't we look after them?
It's all we have in agency world.
It's all we have.
They create everything.
Yeah. Aside from just the moral argument, as human beings and directors and founders and leaders and senior people, and we
should be nice.
We got to be good humans, right? But people are our greatest asset. So why wouldn't we look after them? And then more broadly, to put energy, time and attention onto the topic of mental health, it will make you a better business, performance-wise, productivity-wise. And then going back to what I think sits at the real heart of it, culture. And of course, look, if you've got to really look hard at your culture for the reason of mental health, you're doing a good business exercise anyway, because if it doesn't accommodate mental health conversations, there is something wrong with your culture, and that's going to impact your business more widely.
Yeah, 100%.
And that's things like recruitment, your reputation as a good place to work. It's about how long people will stay with the business. And we know it costs us money every time someone leaves, and then we have to recruit someone else. So all of these things around mental health feed into culture, but actually culture, we know, is one of the most important things of creating a successful business. So again, why wouldn't you?
Yeah, 100%. I think that's, especially prevalent in our industry, but something, like you say, for every business owner, every director, every leader to be hugely aware of. What I would really like, we're running out of time today, I've back booked people too much on the podcast today, but what I'd really like to get is maybe from the book that you're working on at the moment.
Oh yes.
But a practical tip that anyone who's listening could go, right, okay, what's one of the first steps that I can take to really think about how I can evolve my business, change my culture, be more aware of mental health? Like, is there something that we, or that I could do within Street, that you think anyone could pick up and would be a good starting point for trying to, create this more inclusive, open culture?
So I think I might start with a conversation. And so where could you start that conversation? Of course, you could put it on the agenda for a company-wide meeting and conversation, but maybe you want to start it in a little bit of a smaller group. So, you know, can you put it onto the agenda for your senior team, your management team, your leadership team? Depends how big you are. You know, it might be with your business partner, or, you know, that person that absolutely is your senior person right by your side. So start that honest conversation, you know, and maybe that first question, you know, what is our culture like in terms of support in mental health conversations?
Yeah, I think it's really important at the moment because, and I keep seeing this on LinkedIn and talking to other businesses, and even within, you know, my own business, is there does seem to be quite a lot of overwhelm at the moment, even though there isn't necessarily more work. I don't know if it's a post-COVID thing, but I've been seeing it on, and in fact, I think Ian Harris from Agency Hackers, I don't know if you know Ian, he was talking about it, like he was speaking to lots of HR, heads of culture, business leaders, and everyone's saying within the agency world, everyone's feeling overwhelmed, yet there doesn't seem to be more work. So there's
that's so interesting. So I definitely get, when I do talks, and I will ask people, how are you showing up? And you know, sometimes people are fine today or looking forward to this session, but that you will get a lot of fatigue, tired, overwhelmed, tired, fatigue, and you know, and it keeps on coming. But it's interesting that you say, actually, the insight is we are not more busy. But I think, you know, we are still in the, in quote marks, the hangover of the pandemic, and being in a state of fear and anxiety for the duration of the pandemic, and now as we recover, and all the different things that have fed into that, the fear of this unknown disease, the lockdowns, the impact that had, working differently, not working at all, losing your work, having to do different work, and everyone and every business that's being impacted by that throughout the supply chain, you know, that has just built up and built up and built up, and people are tired. So I would really, I think I would connect overwhelmed with fatigue, tiredness, still a bit of confusion about being out and about. Working ways are still evolving. And a really big debate as well. And then even like the energy that it takes, and I know this for sure, of getting out and about, it is in itself tiring. So if you're tired, you're going to more quickly feel overwhelmed. Yeah, that's a very good point. And I think the change of being stuck at home and all having to work at home for quite a large period of time, even if the business that you worked for did go back to the office quite quickly, the way of life has changed, and we're still trying to navigate that. You know, we've got some of my team that want to go in every day, some that want to stay at home every day, and how you manage that. I mean, gosh, I definitely don't have all the answers, but what's nice to hear, in a way, it was not that I want everyone in the world to be overwhelmed, but it was kind of nice for me to see that on LinkedIn, because I was, as a business owner, I was like, we're really trying to create a culture which is fun, and it almost felt easier in lockdown to do that, because we could do virtual things and meet up for one day a month, and whereas now there's this kind of spirit
hybrid,
of the blitz. You know, we were
in it together,
and now we're just bloody tired. And the other thing is, Katie, the other word that I would throw in is angry. There is, now people won't necessarily say, when I say, how are you turning up? Fatigue, overwhelmed, that will come in. People won't say angry, but people are angry. We are angry for many, many different reasons, you know, and all of which are valid to you personally, to each of us personally. And anger takes a lot of energy as well, and anger, you know, can distract from the good, positive things, recovery. So I think that's probably adding to the difficulties as well.
Yeah.
People feel angry.
I think what I'm going to do at Street, and you might tell me this is wrong, but I'm going to do it anyway. No, I'm not going to do it anyway. If you tell me it's wrong, I'll change it. But
I'm sure I'm not about to tell you it's wrong.
Well, I think, we do have, in fact, we need to get back to doing them properly again, but like monthly get-togethers, and just holding a space in that to check in on everyone, how everyone's feeling. Even if they don't want to share it, write it down, put it, like we used to have somewhere I used to work, like a little box in the room where if you were just feeling, you could do it anonymously, like a little box where you could just put how you're feeling. So I'm thinking, one, holding a space, so if people do want to talk, that they, like, how are you feeling about work, life, anything you want to talk about. Like, we're quite a small, there's only 10 of us, so we're small enough to, be open and have those conversations should people want to, in a fairly, you're not going to be talking about it in front of 100 people. But also I think, and I'm sure digitally there's other ways that you could do it, but it kind of feels quite nice writing something down and putting it in a little box,
I'm
doesn't it?
definitely going to endorse that one.
Good.
And what I would add to it, and this is where you'll have to dig deep, Katie.
Yes.
Or not, actually. I have a feeling this might come really easy to you.
Oh, I don't know.
But it won't come easy to all leaders. But you got to lead by example on this one. So the first part of the leadership is creating the space. The second part of the leadership is making sure that space feels safe and that there is a true sense of permission. Giving those options for how people do share, so that people don't feel obliged to, but that hopefully some will, because that is what will make the shift and help set the tone. But it will be how you're feeling, and without a doubt it will be, if you are having a challenging day or week or month or year, if you can find a way to share that openly, and that doesn't mean giving all of the details and disclosure. You've got to look after yourself. But what I see time and time again is when the leaders, the senior person, and I'm not always big on hierarchy, but it does matter in this case, when a senior person opens up and shares a way in which they have struggled with their well-being or mental health, whatever you feel more comfortable calling it, that has the biggest impact on sending a message and supporting a culture that feels safe for others to also share. So you got to you start it by creating the time, but then you got to start it.
Set the tone. I think that is absolutely that is absolutely it. You've got to be open and humanise yourself. I do humanise myself, hopefully, on this podcast and everywhere else. But I hope that I show up to work as a whole person. I do have bad days. I am sometimes moody, but I will, very quickly check in and say, look, sorry guys, if I've set. I'm not a short person, but if there have been occasions where I've been a bit like, maybe put a bit too much pressure on the team, I'll say, look, I'm sorry, that's because of that. And I think owning it and humanising yourself, not pretending that you're a robot because you're the big boss or the owner or the leader, I think that has a big impact on the culture of my business and others.
I find this difficult. Does anyone else?
Open up the conversation.
Yes, people do. What could we do about it?
Exactly. What do you guys want to do about it as well? Now, one last question. It's what I ask all my guests. But you didn't know that because we didn't send you a brief, So, so just really put Michelle on the spot.
No worries. Bring it on.
If you had someone that you think I should speak to on the podcast, now, of course, there's a few different streams here from, marketing insights, innovations, fantastic leaders in the world of marketing. Knowing that I've already had Sam on, so we can't have him again, but we could do. Is there anyone that you think I should be talking to, friend, foe, or other?
I'm thinking.
I know, I'm mean because I haven't given you any time.
It's really mean. Well, I'll go slightly left field here.
Like it.
and it gives me the opportunity to also share a part of my what next in life. I've become the chair of a TV and film company at the beginning of this year, and I'm really loving how I can pour all of what I've learned over more than 2 decades of leading businesses and founding businesses into Dare Productions. And Dare is led by a brilliant chap called Darren Lawford, and he worked at Livity, having worked at the Beeb over a decade ago, and he invited me to be chair of Dare. And Dare, kind of our internal values actually take the letters of Dare. It's about diversity, allyship, representation and empowerment, but at the heart of telling stories and making sure that we're really embracing those ideas, those such important business ideas, but actually they're important public ideas. And, you know, the stories that we tell behind the camera and in front of the camera have to have those things at the heart of them. And he's the most brilliant storyteller. And of course, you know, being in agencies, we have to tell stories. So I would get him on to tell you some stories and to talk about the art of storytelling and why he set Dare up as well, which is really important. And it does kind of come into that space of content as well. So they're all important areas for agencies to think about. And I think it would give you real value to talk about stories and storytelling.
Love that. Storytelling, one of my favourite things as well. As a big reader, lover of stories, and having grown up in the agency world, hugely important to get people on board as well. So
yes.
I will be asking for an introduction.
Absolutely.
Introduction. I will be asking for an introduction.
I can introduce you.
Brilliant. Thank you, darling, and thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much for inviting me.